Alright, yo. Today, I want to tell you that I am going to talk about potentially one of the biggest, most life-changing books you ever read in your life, right? It was definitely something that I read and I completely adored. It was a book that once I learned something, I would implement that in my life straight away. It was that kind of book. It's no other non-fiction book. It's no other book that tells you the formula, but doesn't tell you the steps to do it. It's not another book that tells you the success examples, but they couldn't be replicated. This book I'm talking about is the most simple book ever. The most well-written book about social skills I've read in my life. And this book I'm talking about is my baby, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Today, what I really want to bring to you is a little summary, a little guide, a full book guide actually. I'm going to be talking about this book for over an hour, I'm pretty sure, about why this book changed my life and how it's going to completely change yours as well. And I made a few notes. I made a few diagrams about how I'm going to explain this book to you. I'm going to first go through this book from the first part. The first part is a summary for 3 other parts of this book. I'm going to go through that in detail. Then for every other part, I'm going to give a personal example about how I took the book, how I implemented it in my real life, and how you can follow me as well. So yeah, I feel like such a teacher right now. Cold. Right, cool. Let's start from the beginning. As I always like to, I like to begin with a quote. And this quote is one of the most telling quotes of the whole book. It tells you about how the human is. So without further ado, let me read it to you. When dealing with people, let us remember that we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices, motivated by pride and vanity. Right, that might sound very complicated. So here I am to simplify it for you. People are selfish, right? People are not logical. People don't know what the hell they're doing. Every action performed by a certain human is just based on these kind of motives, right? These instincts, these thoughts that come subconsciously into their minds. So a lot of the times they're making actions not based on what is correct, what is logical. They're basically taking action because, okay, it feels right. And as telling as this is, it's probably not the right way to deal with problems in life, right? And that's why a lot of people lack social skill. I'm not saying I have amazing social skill, right? But at least I can look you in the eyes while I'm talking. At least I can enunciate what at least I can enunciate my words well and present what I want to say to you quite clearly. Or I hope so. Or else if I'm not, you probably would have clicked off this video a few minutes ago. So yeah, I'm glad that you're still watching. And this quote is integral for the whole book. This quote is repeated and repeated and repeated because it's the basic for dealing with human. If we don't understand that we are dealing with people who are bristling with prejudices, motivated by their pride and vanity, so selfish human beings, how can we ever deal with them? We can't understand them. So to put that out of the way, human beings are selfish. They don't know what the hell they're doing. So when we're dealing with them, we gotta be very clear. We gotta implement certain tactics when we talk to them. And that's why this book is crazy. It's amazing because it tells you a step-by-step guide about how to deal with people. And yeah, all right. So let's go to the first section. And the first section, it talks about the fundamental techniques in handling people. I'm not going to tell you the chapters because there's no point. I'm going to summarize it for you. And I'm going to put in a few excerpts about what I think is really useful, and I'm going to read it to you. So sit back and listen to this masterpiece. Right, so point 1 in this book, very clearly, is don't criticize. Don't criticize, condemn anyone. Because criticizing makes people defensive. And when we're talking to people, the last thing we want them to become is defensive. Because when a man is defensive, he thinks about all the excuses that he builds up in his mind. And it's very difficult to convince someone who's trying to protect his own cause, which is only natural, right? We're all animals, and when we get targeted, when we get violated, when we are in danger of other people's words, such as when we criticize them, people tend to like bristle, right? They tend to be like, oh my God, this should be taken as a warning. And the key thing is just to counter that, it's just not to criticize people, right? As simple as this sounds, many of us go out in the real world and we talk about people's problems in a very straightforward manner. And I'm not saying honesty is wrong. I'm saying that we need to perceive this kind of problem in a more subtle way to convince the other person to see, yo, like, you're doing a problem, but I'm not going to criticize you for it because I totally understand that you are a creature bristling with prejudice, right? I totally understand. And that's exactly why I'm proposing stuff in a more subtle way, which I'm going to get onto. But that's like the first like huge overall point of this book. And I think that's so deep. That's so profound because we've been brought up our lives being criticized, being put down. And everyone knows the feeling, right? When I'm criticized, I'd be like, what the hell, man? Like, all right, I think about all these excuses that I have. For example, like, if I was criticized for stealing something, I'd be like, oh my God, I have an alibi, right? I'm going to talk about everything that justifies my case and I didn't steal something. Even though I did. Even if I did. Not even though I did. I didn't, right? That's only natural. It's only natural to protect yourself in the moment of disadvantage, right? And what I really want to bring to you today is something about parents. This struck very deep with me, and I remember sharing this with my father. It's how parents often forget that they're dealing with children, which is exactly how we deal with other people. We don't remember, as the parent, as the people who read this book, we don't understand how to deal with people who haven't, right? We got to look at them with humility. We got to look at them, we got to step into their shoes to look at the problem, to look at the issue. And oftentimes we don't think that they don't know these kind of principles. We don't think that they might be naive, they might be childish, they might be people who haven't seen a lot of the real world. I'm not saying we have seen a lot of the real world, but we're just making an example. And a lot of parents criticize their children a lot. And I feel like a lot of my criticisms I've felt from my parents. And that's totally normal. I'm not condemning them anyway. I feel like a lot of those criticisms were justified. It's just the way I respond to those criticisms. I'd be like, what the hell, man, right? It's just stuff like that. And the main thing to bring up a child or to interact with people is just to realize that they don't understand. So I'm going to read you this excerpt that I found very profound, that I really found like it was amazing. It's going to be a long excerpt, but it's definitely worth your time. It's called Father Forgets by W. Livingston Lard. This is a father writing to a son about him unfairly criticizing his own son. Listen, son. I'm saying this as you lie asleep. One little paw crumpled under your cheek, and the blonde curls stickily wet on your damp forehead. I've stolen your room alone. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat reading my paper in the library, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. Guiltily, I came to your bedside. There are things I was thinking, son. I'd been cross to you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you gave your face merely a dab with a towel. I took you to task for not cleaning your shoes. I called out angrily when you threw some things on the floor. At breakfast, I found fault too. You spilled your things. You gulped down your food. You put your elbows on the table. You spread butter too thick on your bread. And as you started off to play and I made for my train, you turned and waved a hand and called, "Goodbye, Daddy." And I frowned. I said in reply, "Hold your shoulders back." Then it all began all over again in late afternoon. As I came up the road, I spied you, down on your knees, playing marbles. There were holes in your stockings. I humiliated you before your boyfriends, before marching you ahead of me to the house. Stockings were expensive, and if you had to buy them, you would be more careful. Imagine that, son, from a father. Do you remember later when I was reading in the library and how you came in timidly, with a sort of hurt look in your eyes? When I glanced up from my paper, impatient at the interruption, you hesitated at the door. "What is it you want?" I snapped. You said nothing, but ran across one tempestuous plunge and threw your arms around my neck. Your small arms tightened with an affection that God had blooming in your heart, and which even neglect could not wither. And then you were gone, pattering up the stairs. Well, son, it was shortly afterward that my paper slipped from my hands, and with a terrible sickening fear came over me. What has habit been doing with me? The habit of finding fault, of reprimanding. This is the reward to you for being a boy. It was not that I didn't love you. It was that I expected too much of youth. I was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. And there was so much good and fine and true in your character. The little heart of you, as big as the dawn itself over the wide hills. It was shown by your spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me goodnight. Nothing else matters tonight, son. I've came to your bedside in the darkness, and I've knelt there, ashamed. It is a feeble atonement. I know you would not understand these things if I told you during your waking hours. But tomorrow I will be a real daddy. I will chum with you and suffer when you suffer and laugh when you laugh. I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying it as if it was a ritual. He's nothing but a boy, a little boy. I'm afraid I've visualized you as a man, yet I see you now, son, crumpled and weary in your cot. I see that you're still a baby. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms, your head on her shoulder. I've asked too much. Too much. I love that. That's so true, because one, I can relate to it with my parents, right? And another, it's just that a lot of people don't realize that people in this world are nothing but the baby, right? People who only desire to learn are the people who can call themselves the father, I think. And that's very profound. And that's the same thing what we should be doing when we're dealing with people. We don't realize that they're that little baby. We need to speak our words in a way that makes sense to them. We need to be very compassionate. We need to be empathetic when we deal with people, and that's such a powerful point to make as the first one. Right, so point number 2 in this whole fundamental thing. People crave importance and improvement. And I think that blew my mind. When I first read this book, I was like, oh my God. Because this quote that you're about to hear is probably the quote of the book. It's not the quote that summarizes the book, but it's the quote of the book. It goes like this: be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. You might ask me, what the hell does that mean? Right? I'm not speaking English here, I'm speaking scientific language. It basically means pay a lot of genuine compliments, as easily summarized. And a lot of the times we don't pay people compliments. It's crazy to me how we don't, right? As a personal example, I remember I was talking to my friend, and like, she said, "You're the best." Like, that's crazy to me, right? I never receive any compliments. So, like, the normal world shaped you to feel like, oh my God, I never received that before. Is she like taking the piss, or is she like joking, stuff like that? Like, I can't believe that was my first reaction. It was genuine praise. People are saying, the person was saying that you're the best. And still the society molds your brains thinking, hey, that's not a compliment. There's something weird here. And in reality, there's nothing more than just praise, right? It's because people don't receive enough praise. People never do. And when you praise other people, it makes you different. It makes you a good conversationalist. That's a key point in this book. So we're going to talk about page 19. A little bit about Lincoln's tale. Because I think this illustration is going to hit people quite hard. Because Lincoln is this man who is the president of the United States. He's probably one of the most powerful men ever existed. And he also desired to feel important, right? He also desired to have people praising him. So it wrote in this book, it was the desire of feeling importance that led an uneducated, poverty-stricken grocery clerk to come study some law books he found in the bottom of the barrel. You've probably heard of this grocery clerk. His name was Lincoln. It's so true, because becoming a lawyer makes you more status, makes you more friends, makes you more respected in society. And when people need to do this to gain praise, don't you think the only counter to better society would just be giving praise? To be giving genuine praise, seeing the hard work that people put in every day for you, for the society, for everything. Every garden worker, every person in the office, every government member, they're working for you, right? They make the world a better place for you. And it's only when you open your mind to these small things is that when you realize, hey, there's so many genuine things that I can praise about people. And thinking about it, they don't receive any of that praise. They get looked down upon. Here's a very good part of the book that I want to present to you. I think, yeah, it was crazy when I first read this. Dale Carnegie described eating like fasting, right? Not eating food with appreciation. He listed a list of things that humans need, right? Like water, food, shelter, friends, whatever. Like, I don't know, company, love, sex, stuff like that, right? But then he was like, the most important thing out of them all actually is appreciation. He illustrated this. I once succumbed to fad of fasting and went for 6 days and nights without eating. It wasn't difficult. I was less hungry at the end of the 6th day than I was at the start of the 2nd. Yet, I know, as you know, people who would think they had committed a crime if they let their families or employees go 6 days without food. But they would let them go 6 days and 6 weeks and sometimes 60 years without giving them the hearty appreciation they crave almost as much as they crave food. That's so powerful. Think about it. It's so commonplace for us to not give compliments. It's so commonplace in this society for us to criticize other people that we even forget to give them something they crave as much as daily nutrition, right? That's so simple. That's so simple. It's such a simple way for you to make friends that I can't fathom how many acquaintances I made from just complimenting them, from being genuine, being authentic. People don't realize that. And it's so crazy to me. And another thing they mentioned in this book, do you know why a lot of people divorce? A lot of wives run away? Obviously, this is not from personal experience, but it illustrates that the point that many wives disappear from their husbands is because the husbands don't give the wife as much praise. which is like, damn, man, you're like risking your entire relationship. Just like, it's so simple. Buy her some flowers. Say, hey, you're looking beautiful today. What's so hard? What's stopping you? If you're like disagreeing with me right now, what the hell are you thinking, man? I'm telling you the most important thing you ever hear in your life. All right. Last, just on this chapter, I'm going to point out flattery. Right, you might say, bro, what about flattery? How would people detect if I'm using flattery? Or like, even if it's like just to use flattery, right? And how do I praise people without flattering them? Like trying to be flattering. I love how this is tackled in the book as well. It's such a key point in this book. Flattery it doesn't exist, man. Like, if you're trying to be genuine, if you're actually looking at the good points in a human being, you don't need to flatter them. I think I can remember this by heart. It was like flattery and genuine appreciation. One comes from the teeth and out, and one comes from the heart and out. That's so true. One is you just saying the praise. One thing is that you're meaning it. And that's the entire difference. Let me just give you a brief example. For example, you're in school, right? You might be a 16-year-old just like me. Or you could be at work, right? It doesn't matter. We've all seen janitors in our lives. And these people are what you normally would consider as people from a lower class. Well, people who are doing the dirty job, right? You might think that. But what if I tell you, imagine how dirty your building would be without these janitors. Imagine how smelly the toilet would be. Imagine how revolting it would be to work in that environment, to study in that environment. You don't need to think. These people are as important to the school or office place functioning as the CEO themselves. Sure, you need ideas, right? You need a person who's a leader to run the company, but you also need these people who work for you. They would willingly work for you, and they would willingly do things that normal people wouldn't. So what's so degrading about that? It's such a key point in this book. You got to look on the small people and you look at the bright side on them. You look at the things that you're worth praising, worth complimenting. And when I said hi to a janitor in my school, right, they were like, hi back. It was such a good conversation. We were just talking about what they thought about the school, what we thought about life, and what their lives are, right? How difficult their upbringing was. And it was so touching for me to talk to many janitors within my boarding house and with my school. We just got to know them. And they were genuine people just like us. But it only takes us to realize that they exist, to praise them for what they're doing, the small things, to give back, right? And I remember, as a personal example, we have a few janitors in our boarding house. So since they were all women, I figured on International Women's Day, which is March the 8th, if you don't know, I bet a bunch of boys out there do not know this. I brought some sweets from China, and I was like, here you go. I really want to say how much I thank you for being here, and how much I praise you, and how much I think you're such an important part of our Asia community. And they were like, wow, no one ever gave them gifts. Let me make this very honest. No one ever gave them gifts because no one ever looked at them. No one ever processed that they are such an integral part of our community. And I just said, I'm going to change that because I see the good in them. I see the good in everyone. That's what you should be trying to do. See the good in every single person. And it's very, very simple. Praise them genuinely from the heart. Because everyone has something you can praise about. You can't give me a sentence saying like, oh, there's nothing to praise about that person. Because there is. It's just that you're not opening your eyes, man. Most people are blind. As Socrates says, I know that I know nothing. If you take that attitude into the world, I know that I know nothing, you'll learn so much more. You'll gain so much more. You'll gain so much more friendship and acquaintances. Right, that's quite a lot. Okay. Point number 3, the fundamental of the book, is how to make people want to do something. And this is like getting into much more like business, right? Leadership, into like developing your ideas and how do you coordinate with other people, which is also an integral part of life, but it's definitely more sophisticated than the previous 2 we mentioned, which are practical for everyday uses. And I think what sums it up best is by literally like entrepreneur Henry Ford. Like, who can phrase it better than Henry Ford, man? Like, the greatest man in vehicular history said, if there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. To see things from other people's view. We can't make an argument if we just look on one side. Right? And we can't try to begin to convince someone if we're being totally selfish, which most of us are. But this book is going to train you. We're not going to be selfish. The key point that I've learned from this chapter was that you need to serve others. When you think about an argument, or think about a product, or you think about an idea, right, that you're trying to sell another person, you got to serve them first. You got to make them want it, right? You got to make them like your idea. Be like, this is practical. This is something that's attainable. Something that's would bring me benefit as well. Like, you need to make them think like that. If you don't give them any personal benefit, then why would they do anything for you, right? This might be for an employee, which is salary. It's so simple. This might be for a student, right? Why would you learn? Because you want to have more knowledge. You want to have more applicable knowledge for real life so you can thrive in the future, right? Stuff like that. It's very simple. But a lot of people just look on their own perspective. They'd be like, I want you to do something. But the other person would be like, why? Right? They would ask such a simple question, why? You can't say why because you're looking at it from one-sided angle. So serve others, everyone. Serve others before yourself. Find out why they would want to do something. When you ask that question repeatedly to yourself, why? Then when you have a reason, when you have an initiative, when you have an incentive for the other person to do something, apply it. Right, I think I have a very good example. So, when I started my history club, I really wanted people to come, right? I really wanted customers. And that's the big part of selling yourself. I created a history club in my school, and you try to broadcast to let people come. Evidently, a lot of people come because you're there, right? Because you're starting. But another reason why I made people come is because of my structure. So I do it in the format of storytelling. I tell people the reason why you're coming to this club is that you get to listen to great stories, right? You get to learn more about history. I get to tell you stories about historical figures that school never taught you before. I offered something that they didn't have. They didn't have enjoyment. They didn't have creativity in the same way as they view learning. They don't view things two directly different paths on the same path. I was like, I'm going to combine both of those and I'm going to serve you. I'm going to learn all of these things for you then I'm going to tell it to you in an engaging manner, right? You need to do things like that. Yeah. It's crazy. All right. Now, I'm going to go through, as I said, 3 of my personal examples. It's already 30 minutes, but that's fine. We're bang on time. And I'm not going to give a summary of everything, because I think that's very futile. There's no point in me giving a summary of everything. But what I'm going to give you is a summary of my life experience, of what I learned from this book, how I implemented it, how you can implement the same exact thing. All right. What section 2 of this book really talks about is how to make people like you. And damn, that's a big topic now. How to make people like you. It's really not that hard. It's very simple. I can really categorize things, these 6 points that he makes, into 2 main categories, right? One is empathy. Another one is attention to detail, I think. So let's start off from attention to detail, I think, is the most important. These details are 1, smile. 2, remember the other person's name. I think these are so key, because smiling makes a good first impression again and again. If I smile at you, you think, this guy is like cheery dude. I would want to talk to him. And that's the primary for making friends. If you make yourself presentable, if you make yourself smile, people would approach you, right? It's so simple just to smile to a stranger on the street. Be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, good morning. Hey, nice to meet you, right? If you're not smiling, be like straight face, stone face, be like, hey, nice to meet you. Like, who would want to talk to you, man? You would seem like an absolute jerk, right? If you're smiling, be like, oh my God, they would want to talk to you. Even though they wouldn't get anything out of you, they wouldn't feel nice, right? People do things that make themselves feel nicer. And I think the next point is a very key point of my story. Names. So when I went to school, I really found out that a lot of people, they don't realize the little people in life. They don't realize the people that makes the education. Like, even for you, if you're a working adult, people around you, right? People doing all sorts of jobs, all sorts of things to make everything happen for you. And I realized that there are things I mentioned before, like janitors, like cafeteria staff, right? That don't get enough attention and praise. So what I told myself is that I'm going to smile to cafeteria staff. I'm going to say hi to them, because no one does, right? You get your food, you go. You get your food, you go. You never get to talk to any of them. So I'll be like, all right, this is my chance. Why don't I, right? Why don't I take the first initiative and smile to them and say, hi, what's your name? 2 things I learned from this book I implemented. Guess what? Next day, I go up to the counter. Hi, what's your name? Then she was like, kitchen staff. Oh, hello, my name is Jemima. What's your name? Like, Simba. Then we started to talk, right? Talk. Like, where are you from? Like, how come you're working at Seven Oaks, right? At my school, right? How much do you like the food? Like, such simple questions really builds you a friendship. And from that day onwards, like every single morning, I'll be like, hi, Jemima, right? She'd be like, oh my God, you remember my name? Stuff like that, genuine things like that. Be like, hi, Jemima. 2 words, man. That builds something so much more than 2 words. that's really what I want to tell you. To pay attention to small detail, it changes your life. And that was just a personal illustration. Another thing that I think is very deep is that you got to let the other person talk. You got to be interested in the other person, which is also talked about in the book. A lot of the times, since we're selfish human beings, we only want to talk about ourselves. We never listen to other people. And I think that's the main part you're missing out upon. You're missing out upon the amazing life that everyone else lives because you only want to talk by yourself. And if you think about it in a counterintuitive way, like, you're not learning when you're talking by yourself, right? You're making yourself a better presenter, or you're making yourself cooler in front of other people, right? You're not learning anything. And still, people don't do that, right? People don't listen to other people. You can learn so many things about other people. You can learn so many things about humans, about adventures, about geography, about history, or whatever, from talking to other people. And when you're conversing with someone, like, be humble. Like, talk about what they want to talk about, or what they're interested in. I found out, because I go to church, right? I found out that a lot of things that, like, genuine people, like, I would talk to a lot of people who go to church, like, a main thing that they really want to talk about, because they're, like, old people, right? It's about their children. Because that's the main thing that matters to them the most, that interests them the most. They want to show off, because people all are showing off creatures, right? We all want to display how amazing we are, how many achievements we got, like, whatever, like, what degree we have. We have a doctor. A lot of people like to name themselves, oh, a doctor, I'm so cool, I'm a doctor. Shut the hell up, bro. Like, who gives a fuck? Genuinely, like, what do you think when you look at a doctor? Just a guy who, like, works with, like, I respect them, like, with all due respect to them, like, you get, like, turned off by those people. You just be like, oh my god, he's so sophisticated, like, should I talk to him? Like, all these barriers, like, it's not, like, making yourself a very presentable person, because you would think that they have all the knowledge, but, like, you'd be afraid, like, how can they explain this knowledge? Like, they know so many things. Like, you need to be simple in life. And just what I'm talking about, right? They like to talk about their children, and since I'm, like, probably, like, younger than their children, right? I would have things to relate to them about their children. I'd be like, oh yeah, please talk about your children. Please talk about holiday plans, Please talk about everyone you see, all your relatives, Just, like, show off to me, because I want to listen, and I genuinely do. I find so many people so fascinating from, like, the life they lead, right? The lifestyle they lead. From even asking them to what jobs they do. Like, these are the things where you get to know people, right? And in turn, they would ask you, but first listen to them. Because that's what makes you attractive. That's what makes you a good conversationalist. That's the key. Listen to other people, right? Don't go in and talk by yourself. Oh, hi, my name is Simba. I'm 16 years old. I love football. I love piano. Like, bro, like we don't need a personal introduction, man. Like, what we need is you to sit down and be like, hey, I'm interested in you. Tell me about your children. Tell me about your life. Hey, what job do you do? Oh, wow. I like geography as well. Like, stuff like that, just, it's so simple. It's so simple to start. I cannot fathom how simple it is to start a conversation, yet so many people are socially awkward. Because they don't know what to talk about, right? If you're interested in other people, there's always things to talk about, right? You don't, like, even if you're socially awkward, you'll talk by yourself. If you ask people questions, they would answer. That's how society works. Question, answers, and statements. There's no point using statements because, like, we're not in the middle of a conversation, but, like, question and answers. Ask them questions. Provocative ones. Be like, hey, I want to know more about you, right? It's crazy. It's crazy how this works like a charm. Right. Now let me illustrate some more examples, because I like storytelling. And I think that's a key way to learn, man. I think it's so integral to your learning, storytelling. I cannot stress this enough. Alright, let's look at the third section, which is about how to win people over with your way of thinking. And what I really wanted to talk about in here, like a lot of this is, sure, it's about talking, but it's also about arguments, right? It's also about arguments. And as previously mentioned, people don't realize that, that arguments are probably the worst thing you can do in life. When you're trying to prove a point, you shouldn't argue with the other person. You shouldn't present this radical example of how you are 100% correct, because you're not. As Franklin D. Roosevelt says, I only know 75% of things in the world. Bro, he's like one of the smartest people, like, ever. And he says, I only know 75% of things in the world. I'm only 75% correct. So how can you justify that you're 100% correct? Are you smarter than the President of the United States? I don't think so, right? The average person knows about 50% of the things, right? Okay, the correct 50% of the time, that's what I mean. So, like, be humble, man. Like, if you're only 50% correct, how can you be so judgmental? And the main thing to avoiding arguments is to be sympathetic, to see how other people think, right? The way to win people over to your way of thinking is to understand their way first, right? Then how can you tackle the issue if you don't understand the issue itself? That's the key point. And a lot of the times, what I really want to add up upon this argument, and I'm gonna talk about a few of these principles. Illustrated in Principle 3, Dale Carnegie says, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and empathetically. And emphatically. Emphatically, that's my bad. That's so true. If you're wrong, admit it, man. What's the shame in admitting you're wrong? That's only human, right? We're only human. We're supposed to be right and wrong and right and wrong, right? We're not supposed to be right all the time. Just people think that it's so unjust to be wrong, right? It feels so bad. Oh, you get that burning feeling of embarrassment. No, hell no, bro. Like, I love being wrong, man. Like, when people say, like, when I realize I'm wrong, I'll be like, yo, I'm wrong, right? Because that's what opens your mind, saying you're wrong. Being like, hey, I'm willing to look at your point of view. Most people don't do that. That's what makes you different from 99% of the people. Your ability to step down, be humble. Okay, I'm gonna be humble. Tell me what you got. Right, stuff like that. And I feel like when I talk, a lot of my friends, it's just like this, right? I don't have a specific example, but you could just imagine, for example, we're talking at the dinner table, right? At 6 p.m. or whatever, eating our dinner, then a guy would bring up a point, right? Just something about the geopolitical situation of the world, right? But someone else would counter it, and they would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And like, it's even when someone would take out their phone and justify their points, like, for example, some statistics that show this and that. The other person's never convinced that they're wrong. They'd be like, oh, that information's outdated, That was never true, some blatantly lying reporter, and stuff like that. But like, realistically, what's the point of convincing them if you're putting them in an embarrassing situation, right? Or if you're the person being attacked, right? Being justified by the statistics, you'd be like, okay, why do I say I'm wrong, right? We're only making the relationship worse by not admitting that we're wrong. My throat's actually gonna die. I think that's so important, right? And yeah, key point also to be friendly. Think about it. If I'm talking to a person who's hostile, who doesn't have the smile on my face, like right now, but like funny, like what the like, if I was doing that, would you listen to me? Would you seriously be like, okay, this guy might be worth listening 45 minutes to? No, you wouldn't. You would think I'm a complete weirdo, right? You would think that I'm out of my mind. There's no way you're gonna listen 45 minutes to me. So yeah, be friendly, man. Is that not so self-explanatory? If you're friendly in every instant, you put the person at ease. Do I put you at ease? I'm not wearing some kind of suit and tie, just looking very stern and looking very serious. Oh my god, slam my coffee down. I'm like, bro, I'm gonna talk about real. No, I'm not. I'd be very genuine. Just who I am. There's a hoodie I wear every single day. I'm very friendly. I try to make hand gestures. I try to make eye contact. Like, be friendly. It's so easy to turn an enemy into a friend. And that's exactly what you want to do, turn an enemy into a friend. That's the best way to destroy an enemy. You don't need me to repeat that again, right? That's everything you learn in life, turn an enemy into a friend. I just repeated that for you again. Right? That's so simple. That's really, really so simple. And last is just, talks a lot, like waffling, right? The bad thing about this book is that it repeats a lot of its points, but I'm just summarizing for you. I'm just getting the best points, I'm just telling you. Then being sympathetic, right? What I previously mentioned, I like to step into people's shoes, to look at the way they're presenting their arguments, to look at why they come from the situation. For example, imagine if you're going to court about a woman stealing some of your eggs. I should say that, right? You might be a middle-class man, a middle-class white man who's 55 years old, have a wife and 3 children, and live a mildly comfortable lifestyle. And on the other hand, you meet, I'm not making stereotypes here, I'm just say Asian man, because I'm Asian, right? An Asian 25-year-old man who dropped out of high school and who's an immigrant and he has 15 children. He has to feed his children, man. He's unemployed, man. You gotta look at things from the other person's perspective. You gotta look at how the Asian man is starving and be like, oh my god, right? That's quite an extreme example, but that's how the world is. If you don't understand that he's not also a middle-aged white man who's 55, having 1 wife and 3 children with a well-paid job, right? If you don't realize that you are not him, or he is not you, you can never change your perspective. And there's always going to be something blocking your brain. It's going to be something like a dam, It filters out the things you want to hear and you don't want to hear, and filters in the things that justify your points. That's such a good example. I'm going to repeat that again. Your mind is like a dam. You can't make your mind like a dam. It filters out the things you don't want to hear, and it makes you listen to the things you want to. Why? Why do you make your mind like a dam, man? Make it like a waterfall. Like the roaring torrents of water can just fall through. You can get all the evidence, all the justification, all the reasons to see why there's no point. It's futile to make an argument. Right? Enough of that personal example, right? I was talking to my mum a few days back, and a lot of the things, I'm sure everyone experiences when you're talking to parents, it's sort of like they don't listen, right? It's sort of like they just want to justify their points. They just want to say this, and you're wrong, they just want to say that. They just want to say you're wrong. That's all they want to say. And it makes them feel good if you're wrong. I'm not saying this because my parents are bad. My parents are amazing, but it's just, sadly, this is something that a lot of teenagers, a lot of even adults, man, adults, if you're a 35-year-old white man watching this, you probably felt this as well. Or a 55-year-old black man watching this, right? Try not to make racial stereotypes. But yeah, I was talking to my mum, and she was like, because a lot of things revolve around, education, right? So, we were talking about how she has a vision for me, right? She envisions me to do this. And a lot of people around me who have a similar background to my mother, Asian background, Asian upbringing, a way to put them is that they're very hardworking, right? But they get forced into doing a lot of stuff. And my mum sometimes want me to become them because as we're from the same racial background, right, it's only natural to follow in other people's footsteps. And I felt like she was trying to provoke an argument. So I think the best thing that I did was that I stayed silent. It's a key point in this book. You listen to what the other person has to say, then you make your own judgment. You make your own point after listening to what they got to say. Because then you can digest all their points. And then you can present why you see things in a different way while knowing how they see it. So potentially, I was listening to my mum about an hour, and then she ran out of gas, and she was like, okay, you go. I said nothing. I looked in the eyes, and I was nodding. I was like saying, yeah, you're right. Saying stuff like that. It makes a person at ease. Rather than an argument, it was more like a talk. It was more like a genuine talk, right? Her presenting me why she wants me to do this, and then I was just listening. I was being friendly. I was listening. I was nodding, right? I was not being hostile. That was the key point. Then after she finished, I was like, hey, Mum, I understand what you said. I truly do. I can see the world from your point of view and your upbringing and all the factors surrounding you that make you think in this way, that why you want to organize my future in this way. But I said, hey, I'm 35 years younger than you. And this is my generation. I basically said something like that. But I was like, a lot of things have changed from the way you see the world. And everything's rapidly changing every single day. So if you look at away from how other parents see the world, right, they are obviously ignorant. They're ignorant to how the world is right now. We're not living in 1975. We're living in 2015, something like that. No, we're not living in 2015. We're living in 2023, actually. So yeah. Then I was like, here, let me give you some examples. Because as a personal take, not from this book, I think examples are so good for you to illustrate why you think something, right? So I was talking in a soft voice. I was making hand gestures. I was being gentle. I was looking in her eyes, right? And she listened. She was like, wow. She was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I understand. I gave the example that I previously gave of the flower. A lot of people want to grow upwards as a flower, but people don't realize how important it is to build the foundation. I told her that she wants to see progress right now, so she wants me to grow upwards as a flower, right? But I said to myself that right now what I really want to do is grow my roots. So in the end, I can grow up faster and be more strong and be more sturdy than ever before anyone else. I would be that 1% rather than 99% grow upwards. I'll go under. You can't see my progress right now, but I'm making so much progress. I also made a very good example in the book, The 4-Hour Work Week that I read. I was like, imagine there's a fuel leak, right? Everyone else would think, so this is particular to studying. I think such a good example. It was like studying, right? A lot of people try to do as many past papers, do as many learn as much content as possible, right? Stuff like that. I was like, that's not how you learn, man. Like sure, you can do a lot of past papers, but you're not thinking about doing these past papers. So I was like, there's a fuel leak in the car, imagine. And the normal person would just fill up at the petrol station multiple times. Like they would go more to the petrol station. But that just, like getting more oil into the tank doesn't help the problem. Doesn't help the root of the problem. You're not making your grades any better. Maybe you are, but by less significant amount, because you're trading your time for the results. That's not how it's supposed to work. You're not trading your time for results, because you only have that certain amount of time in the day. So that's why you have to keep adding in the oil, because you're adding in the time. But this way, the gap grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's going to be a time where you can't add as much oil as the leak is going to leak out, right? And I'll be like, what am I doing right now? I might not be doing all these past papers. I might not be learning all the content, but I know what I am doing. I'm learning how to answer the question. I said I'm looking at the mark scheme. I'm analyzing all the question words. I'm analyzing all the content we did to structure them in very specific structures, right? So I can easily tackle them when I actually start to revise. I'll be like, Mom, I'm doing that. It doesn't look like I'm revising, but the thing I'm doing is that I'm patching the hole in the engine. So putting that in a very straightforward, in a very conversational way, right? Try to listen to others than they listen to you. Be friendly. So simple. You don't need to win an argument. Avoid the argument. That's how you win. Aye. Some cold points, I can't lie. Aye. So last point. Last section 4 of this book is how to be a leader. And I'm gonna be honest, it takes so much to be a leader. So if you're not necessarily a leader right now, I suggest you don't have to listen to this part. It's gonna be a waste of your time. But if you think you'll be a leader, this is great. This is honestly like how you deal with people as a leader, and how you influence them, and how you change them. This book tells you that. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't read this part at first. I was like, who needs to know about how to be a leader? But yeah, you do. You really do. As a leader, you need to be humble, right? You need to be really humble. You need to understand that people are not perfect. That people like employees or whatever, like your CEO watching this, oh my God. Hey. Honestly, if you're CEO, goddamn. I don't think so. Yeah. You gotta understand that people are people. Like, they're flawed. Like, a lot of the times, they don't know what they're doing. But we can't criticize them for that. That's the last thing you can do, like fire an employee. Like, why would you want to fire an employee? Like, a lot of the times they're doing work for you, right? The only thing you can really do is like to make them understand why they need to work for something, why there's a cause, why there's an incentive. That's you as a leader. That's how you display your leadership, not by firing them, getting more employees. Like, the root of the problem is not change, right? Then, yeah, I think as a leader, this could also be summarized very briefly. It could just be how to tackle with people as a leader. And it begins with praise, as it always does, right? And I think that's the key part when I succeeded talking to my friends. As I previously mentioned, I'm the president of the History Club. I'm the founder and president of the History Club in my school. Wow, crazy. It's not. Just found a club. But I'm a leader in that sense. And my best friend, who's also the co-founder, like, each week we're supposed to write stories, right? My co-founder and we just write stories and present to people. But if there's no stories, like, we wouldn't have a session and people would be disappointed. So my co-founder was like the night before, like, I can't write the story. But realistically, up to that point, I've been reminding him every single day, yo, like, you need to do the story on Friday because we had the club. But he didn't. And the next day, we had a terrible history club. Right? We couldn't find out anything. Like, basically freestyling on the spot. That's not how it works. I'm supposed to bring a good story and go there. And that was an issue. Right? But as a leader, I knew that I can refer to this book, like, I can learn how to deal with a problem like this, like procrastination. Then I was like, I'm going to begin with praising him. When I talk to him, I'd be like, hey, can I have 2 minutes with you? I was like, you know what I appreciate most about you? Is that your willingness to collaborate with me to start this history club. Your willingness to put in the work week in, week out for the club. Your willingness to put your heart in for our customers, for us, and I really appreciate you. And that changed so much, right? Obviously, as a person who made a mistake, you would think, oh, the other person is going to target me completely, they're going to shower me with bullets the first time they talk to you, right? Normally, I would say, what the hell, man, why'd you not write that? Right? You don't start like that. Be like, hey, I appreciate you. Because I genuinely do. Genuine appreciation, hearty approbation, and lavish praise, right? I was like, you mean the world to me. And that's why I'm disappointed, right? Give them a reason to defend their reputation. Give them a good reputation. That's another thing in this book. Give a dog a good name, right? Give them something to defend. You give them a reputation, the next time they will do anything to write a good story because they mean the world to you. Then, right, what this book really talks about is like calling attention to people's mistakes, but not being very obvious, right? And another one I'm going to bring up in this example is how to talk about your own mistakes. So basically, I wasn't like straight off be like, yo, your procrastination is a problem. But I talked about my own mistakes. I was like, you know, I understand because a lot of the times I procrastinate a lot. And thinking about this as a homework assignment, like a lot of the times I don't hand in homework on time. And I do get penalized a lot for this. But I realized that since history club is something I'm so passionate in, like I haven't not written something. And I was like, I'm sure you think history club is so precious to you as well. So I want to say like, sure, there's an issue of procrastination, but I can help you through it, right? I can give you genuine help to help us through this problem. And that's so straightforward. I just told him I'll be there for him if he needs. Along the way, I let him save face. I wasn't like directly saying, ho, like, what the hell? Why did you not do this? Why did you not do that? I gave him genuine advice, came from the heart and out. And that's how the next week, guess what? He wrote the best history story he ever written. And that's the power of communication. That's the power of being a leader who understands how to deal with people. And all in all, this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, was probably one of the most influential, one of the most engaging, thought-provoking, deep books I've read. So, if you're at the very end of something, which I'm surprised you are, I appreciate you very much. I love you very much. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.